Hey, if you are a guest or you're visiting for the first time, welcome. We are really pumped that you're here. My name is Matt. I'm one of the pastors here. Whenever you would like to, whenever you feel comfortable, I would love to meet you. I usually just hang out in the middle of the lobby. Come up, grab me, say hi. It takes me a couple of times to remember names. Some of you are already making me feel like a fool on that, quizzing me. I really appreciate that. But I would love to meet you whenever you feel comfortable with that. Hey, one thing just to give you a heads up, especially for this summer, we have 4 services here. We have the 3 on Sunday morning, but we also have a Thursday night service every week at 6:30. It is the exact same service as you see in here and at the 11 o'clock. So we do that because, hey, we believe greatly in the gathering of the saints. We believe how important it is for us to gather together each week, not only to worship and hear God's word preached, but just to be together, to encourage each other, to serve. So that's why we do it on Thursday night also, because we know summertime schedules are insane. I mean, my kids have baseball practice all afternoon today. Travel season starts right now. So we want to have an option where, hey, let's still gather together each week and not just miss out, miss 3 out of 4 times a month because schedules are crazy. So I want to encourage you, if you can't be here on Sunday morning, come Thursday night. That's what it's for, okay? Got that? Good with that? Okay, cool, great. I'm glad you're excited. But before we really dive in, we do need to talk about something. What's up with snow right before Memorial Day weekend? Like I'm starting to think this whole, Colorado gets 300 days of sunshine. I'm starting to think that was a lie. Instead of wearing shorts this week, I was wearing my coat. Can we all just agree that enough is enough? Like, am I the only one? Enough? Okay, good. Thank you. I just needed to vent. I needed to complain for a second. So go ahead and open your Bibles to Luke chapter 15. Luke 15. If you don't have a Bible, there should be one in the seat back in front of you. If you don't own one, that is yours. Take it. That is our gift to you. And let me kind of set up where we're going while you're flipping there. Jesus told lots of parables, and parables were stories that he would use to illustrate a point he was trying to make or something that he was trying to teach. And today we are going to start a 3-part series on what probably is Jesus' most famous parable. Now, I'm assuming that you've probably heard of the parable of the prodigal son. Like maybe you know that story or you've at least heard the term before. But whenever there's a well-known biblical story like the prodigal son, the temptation is to think, you know what? Okay, I already know that story. I've already pulled out the application. I'm good. That story is really actually for somebody else that I know. So I'll go ahead and forward them the link to this sermon. I'll invite them to come with me next week, but I'm good. Can we just move on to somebody else? Something else. Now I'm building up a character here, but the point is this. Whenever we think we understand something that Jesus is already teaching and that we got the parable, that we've taken all the application there is for it, we run the risk of missing the point of the parable entirely. Here's a good rule of thumb. If you think that something Jesus is teaching isn't for you or about you, that should be a great indication that it is absolutely for you and that he is talking about you. Like if you ever have the thought process, this is great what Jesus is talking about, but this is really for a friend of mine. Or this would be good for my classmate to hear. Or my spouse definitely needs to hear this. Be really careful with that one. Like, or my coworker needs to hear this, or that dude that's a Chiefs fan, I'm praying for him. This is not for me. This is for somebody else. If you ever have that thought process, that should trigger multiple alarms immediately in your mind saying, oh, hey, heads up. There actually is something here for me. God's probably trying to say something to me here. The prodigal son is a great example of this because the parable of the prodigal son, it's actually not about the prodigal son at all. Jesus never even uses the word prodigal here. The parable of the prodigal son covers the entire spectrum of people in our culture. You, me, and everybody else, and then it points us back to the exact same place. Or I should say, it points us back to the same person. So, I need you to help me illustrate this. This is going to be the participation part of the sermon. If you don't help me with this illustration is going to fall flat. Please don't leave me hanging. Here's what I want to do. I just want to conduct a survey of the room. And don't worry, you can just look right at me. This is a safe place. We want to be real here, okay? So show of hands, first thing. How many of you are the firstborn in your family? I'm the firstborn. All right, there's my people. All right, firstborns. How many of you are the middle child or the youngest? Okay, I'm sorry you're not the firstborn. You're missing out. Okay, that's such a firstborn thing to say, isn't it? How many of you have started attending church just in the last 5 years? Okay, yeah, absolutely. How many of you have been attending church for more than 30 years? Okay. How many of you were baptized before you turned 21? Okay, wow. How many of you were baptized after you turned 40? Okay, great, awesome. All right, here's a good one. How many of you have been burned by a Christian or a bad church experience in the past? You know what? We got to call an audible. We got to do another sermon here. Why don't you go ahead and flip? All right, I got my work cut out today. How many of you, when I say the word Torah or Pentateuch, you know what I'm talking about? Okay? How many of you have drugs or alcohol in your past? Okay, yeah. How many of you have done something in your past that you're embarrassed of or ashamed of? Yeah, that should be all of us. I'm throwing up softballs here. How many of you have experienced some sort of loss because of a mistake that you made? Yeah, that's me. Okay? How many of you have been forgiven by someone, you have forgiven someone, or you still need to forgive somebody? All right? Notice how I'm making that pretty ambiguous, right? The point is this, I could keep going all day, but that list just gets the conversation started, and already every single one of us has risen our hand, some of us multiple times like me on that list. The prodigal son covers that spectrum and so much more. So whoever you are, whatever you've done, wherever you've been, whatever you think you know about this story, it's speaking directly to you. So there's 3 specific characters in this story. There's the father, there's the older brother, and there's the younger son. What we want to do is look at this parable from the angle of each one of those perspectives and see what it says to us. Here's the framework. We live in a pluralistic society today, right? And what I mean by that is our society is open to and committed to multiple philosophies on the way life should be or shouldn't be lived, on what truth is or what it isn't, multiple ideologies and all of that, whatever we want to talk about, whether it's ideas or what truth is or isn't, or multiple philosophies on the way life should be lived, all of that boils people down, everybody down into 2 distinct categories. You're either in the moral conformist category, or you're in self-discovery. For the most part, our society boils everybody down into one of those categories to some degree or another. Moral conformity says this, you know what? I'm not gonna do what I wanna do. I'm gonna do what tradition and what the community I'm a part of wants me to do because that's the way that I'm measured. My value comes from how I do in the right versus wrong ledger. That's moral conformity. I'm gonna adopt the moral standards that are around me. Self-discovery says, you know what? I'm the only one who knows what's right or wrong for me. So I'm going to do whatever I want and live in whatever way I want because that's how I will find happiness. That's self-discovery. Forget moral standards because those things constrict life. It's a really big divide between those 2 categories. Even more so in Western society. The moral conformists would say, you know what? The immoral people of the world, the people who do whatever they want, whenever they want, with no regard to what is right or wrong, those people are the problem with the world today, and moral people, they're the solution. And the self-discovery advocate would say, you know what? The bigoted people of the world, the people who claim they've got all the truth, those people are the problem with the world today, and progressive people are the solution. Now, I'm playing those 2 things out to the extreme. But we could all agree that those are pretty good definitions and description of those categories, right? So which one's right? I mean, is it moral conformity or is it self-discovery? Because, man, if I'm being honest, there's parts of them sound good in both camps. Which one's right? Well, according to Jesus, they're both wrong. And then he uses this parable to explain it. The parable of the prodigal son is not meant to warm our hearts. It's meant to shatter our categories. So we're going to start in verse 11. I'm going to read all the way through it. This is Jesus talking. And he said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me my share of property that is coming to me, aka give me my inheritance. And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered what he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. He was hungry. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. That is about the biggest insult a Jew could suffer. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? Like, I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he rose and he came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion," underline or highlight that word, "and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us celebrate. For this my son was dead and he is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate." They began to party. Now his older son was in the field. And as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked, "What do these things mean?" And he said to him, "Hey, your brother has come, and your father, he's killed the fattened calf because he has received him back safe and sound." But he, the older brother, he was angry, and he refused to go in. And his father came out and entreated him. He pleaded with him, but he answered his father, "Look, these many years I have served you. I have never disobeyed your command. You never even gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him?" And he said to him, "Son, you're always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead, and he is alive. He was lost and is found." So when we talk about fathers, there is going to be a wide range of emotions and experiences. I love my dad. I've been blessed to have a great father. He has outstanding integrity. He's got the hardest work ethic of anybody I know. He's got the best Magnum PI mustache you will ever see. I mean, look at that thing. He's got horrible dad jokes. I mean, the worst. If you ever meet him when he comes out here, don't laugh at his jokes. Don't encourage him. It's like, don't feed bears. Just don't do it. What's most important, though, my dad, he loves Jesus. And I know that he cares about me, and I know that he would do anything for me. A lot of you have the same experience. That's your relationship with your father, but others of you, when you hear the word father, it brings up some emotions and memories that you want to forget. You know, maybe you lost your dad. It's just still painful to think about. I mean, maybe your dad left. Maybe your dad was physically present, but emotionally he was checked out. Maybe your dad, maybe he did things to you and your siblings and your mom that not only disqualified him from being your dad, they also disqualified him from being a man, because a real man doesn't do those things to people, especially his kids and his wife. I mean, there's a wide background and spectrum when it comes to father in this room, but with this story, the prodigal son, we actually all have common ground. It's easy to look at the father in this story and say, "Man, he's such a nice guy. Look at him, he forgave his son, he still loves him, the end, great story." But in order to see the magnitude of what the father's actually doing here, you got to see what he lost first. I mean, the son's request right here to us, asking for your inheritance, that's not that awkward. I mean, it's a little socially inept, and it's lacking some emotional intelligence, but that request really isn't that bad. But what he's actually doing, that's way out of line. It's actually a massive insult. In this culture, in this time period, inheritances were a big deal. They were a big deal. You never asked for your inheritance. It was set up like a trust. You only got it, and you knew this, you only got it when your father died. So by asking for his inheritance in this culture, in this time period, in essence, what the son is saying is, hey, Dad, I wish you were dead. That's what he's saying. Dad, I wish you were dead. It would be better for me if you died. So can we go along and just hurry up and get along with it? I mean, I'm a dad. I cannot think of anything in this world that would hurt more than hearing one of my kids say that. That's absolute and total rejection. That's agonizing. And is there anything more agonizing than hearing your kids say that? Even though he's rejected, even though the son tells his father, I wish you were dead, this father, he doesn't disown him, he doesn't drive him out of his house, which would have been the expected and acceptable response in this culture at the very least. He doesn't do that. Instead, he gives this ungrateful, insulting jerk of a son exactly what he asks for with no hesitation and with no questions asked. He just gives it to him. And then it builds on top of that even more. It says the son took what he had just a few days later to get ready for a journey, AKA all the property his father gave him, he just sold it. He sold it as quickly as he possibly could, meaning he sold it at wholesale, not what it was really worth. This is the family estate. Blood, sweat, and tears have been poured into this for generations. It's been worked on and developed, and now this son is just taking his out of turn, selling it as quickly as possible to get as much cash as he can so he can go play blackjack and hook up with prostitutes. That's what he's doing. It's a massive insult to his father and to his entire family. Incredibly selfish, incredibly apathetic. Not only is it financial and relational loss, well, now it's humiliation too. Because this is a small town. People talk in small towns. The people in this town, they see what's going on. They see how out of bounds this son is. They're not missing this. This isn't hidden. Now he's subjecting the father to humiliation. The people in the town are saying, man, what's up with this train wreck of a kid? What's this say about his father? I mean, what kind of father is he anyway? Well, obviously he didn't raise his child to have respect or morals, because no decent parent would have a kid that would turn out like that. You can hear the conversations in the background, can't you? I mean, the gossip mill is in full force. This father is rejected, he's essentially robbed, and now he's subjected to public humiliation because of his son. And yet he holds out hope. He stands on the front porch of his house with a tear streaking down his face as he watches his son's back walk down this long road that leads away from his house. And in the back of his mind, he's thinking and he's hoping maybe he'll stop. Like maybe self-control will get the better of him. Maybe he'll come to his senses and he'll stop and he'll turn around. So he keeps watching and hoping, but he never does. Son just keeps walking. With every step, it's a little bit more denial. It's a little bit more of a rejection. It's a little bit more of a twisting of the knife in the back. And once the son gets to the point where he's too far gone to see, the father can't see him anymore, at that point, he falls to his knees and he begins to sob. And what he could do is say, all right, you know what? Fine. You're on your own. You wish I was dead? You're dead to me. That would take at least some of the pain away. Some of that sting of rejection. That would take it away a little bit. But it would also take away any chance for reconciliation. If reconciliation is going to happen right now, the son can't do anything about it. Only the father can start reconciliation. And the only way the father can reconcile with the son is if the father suffers. He's got to suffer, or there's no hope for reconciliation. He's got to suffer to care enough to still hope that his son will come back. He's got to suffer through every single day thinking, I don't know where my son is. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he's okay. I don't know if he's alive. I don't know if I'll ever get to see him again. He's got to suffer that kind of thought process every day if he wants reconciliation to happen. He's got to suffer by hoping that one day, each day, I'm going to look out my front porch and I'm going to see him in the distance coming. And then every single day where he doesn't see that happen, it's going to hurt a little bit more. And every day he looks down that long road hoping to see his son, All he's going to do is be reminded of the first time he looked down that road and saw the back of his son right after he rejected him. But he's got to suffer through that. The only way reconciliation can happen is from the father's suffering. And even if the son does come back, it's not that simple now. In Jewish culture, in that time period, they created a ceremony called a kazaza. And what that was basically, it was a public ceremony to cut somebody off. That's all it was. If you were a Jewish boy, and you weren't a man until you turned 40, if you were a Jewish boy and you lost your inheritance among the Gentiles, anybody who is not a Jew is a Gentile. I'm not a Jew, so I'm a Gentile. If you lost your inheritance among Gentiles, just like the prodigal son did, and then you had the audacity to show your face in your hometown, if you had the nerve to come back home, as soon as the people saw you coming, they would start this kazaza ceremony. And what they would do is they would gather this, they would get a big pot, and they would fill it with burnt nuts and corn. Sounds kind of weird, but burnt corn and nuts have no value. So they would take these burned nuts and corn, and they would start breaking it in front of the guilty individual, in front of the son. And then they would start shouting out so everybody could hear, hey, so-and-so is cut off. Here's what he did. Look at the shame he brought on his family. Look at the shame he brought on our town. He is cut off. Over and over again, so everybody heard. How humiliating is that? And now that person that's been publicly shamed, they're shunned, they're exiled, they're never welcomed back. That's what would have happened if the prodigal son came home. So after some time, though, the father's standing on his front porch and he looks down that road. Guess who he sees in the distance? He sees his son coming. The same son that wounded him so deeply, but yet he loves even more deeply. The son that he didn't know what happened to him. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know if he was alive. He didn't know if he'd ever get to see him again. Now that son is coming home. Think about how that father must have felt right there. I mean, he's so excited that he just sprints out of compassion. He's not driven to run out there and get the son's story and say, you need to explain yourself. He's not running out there to wag his finger at him. He's not running out there to shame him. He's not running out there to say, you idiot, I told you what would happen. Get inside with the servants. He's not doing any of that. He's running out there because he loves his son and he wants to just surround him. He just tackles him with a hug and he starts kissing him. He's driven by his compassion, and yet he can't even get there fast enough. He's sprinting out there, but it's too slow because he's got this big robe around his leg. So he just jacks that bad boy up, exposing his underwear, and keeps running. I mean, imagine if your dad was so excited to see you that he sprinted to you in his tidy whities. You're going to have that image in your head today. You're welcome. You're welcome. But that's what he's doing. He just can't get to his son fast enough. He's driven by his compassion for his son. It just overwhelms him. This is where we have common ground. This is where this father in this story represents God. The same love this father has right here, he has for you. Don't miss the point of what he's doing here. In this culture, men didn't run. Jogging, trail running, not a thing in this culture. Men didn't run. It was beneath them, especially with exposed legs and underwear. It was incredibly humiliating. But that's exactly the reason why the father's doing it here. What he's trying to do is not let them see the mess that his son has made of his life. He's trying to get the town people to look at the spectacle of a grown and established man running. Incredibly humiliating. He's doing that on purpose. He's trying to distract them. Even though the son rejected the father still accepts the son. He knows that if the people of the town see his son coming, it's going to be bad news for his son. They're going to immediately reject him. They'll start that ceremony. So by hiking up his robe, exposing his legs in underwear, doing something undignified like running, he's running, causing himself to be a distraction. He's humiliating himself on purpose. By humiliating himself, he's distracting the town from his humiliated son. By the time he gets to his son, he can reconcile with his son before they can ever reject him. That's what he's doing. What's amazing about this part of the story, the best part about it is, this is exactly what Jesus did on the cross. He was humiliated so that you didn't have to be humiliated. He suffered and was rejected so that you could be reconciled. Like, know this. When a prodigal returns, our world will reject and chastise. But with God, when a prodigal returns, he'll celebrate and reconcile. Out there where we live, our culture, our society, whenever a prodigal comes back, just watch social media for 10 minutes. It's a bloodbath. Nothing but rejection and chastisement. It's awful. I mean, why would anybody confess anything? Look what happens. But in here, prodigal, you're going to get celebrated and you're going to be reconciled. This is the common ground piece. The same love that the Father has in this parable for the older brother and the prodigal is the same love and acceptance he has for you. The same compassion that he lavished on the younger brother, which, by the way, the word lavish is another definition for the word prodigal. So the Father's reaction in this is prodigal. That same compassion, that same acceptance is what he has for you. It doesn't matter if you're an older brother or you're a prodigal. Know this, God's love seeks and suffers in order to save you. His love will seek out and suffer in order to save you. Right now, he's seeking you. You're not here just because of a coincidence. He's seeking after you. I mean, he's already suffered. He's already been humiliated on the cross, and he's going to continue to suffer the hope of being connected with a son or daughter that's been separated from him until you come back. He's going to continue to seek after you. He's not going to stop doing that. He's going to continue to seek you because he takes no greater joy than being reunited with a son or daughter that's been separated from him. He gets no greater joy than finding lost sinners. And maybe you're thinking, well, Matt, if you knew my story, I've cursed God in far worse ways than saying, I wish you were dead. Hey, man, if you knew where I'd been, if you knew what I'd done, if you really knew my story, then you know that God would want me back. Now, if that's you, I want to plead with you for a second. And if you only hear one thing today, please hear this. Man, don't buy into that lie. Don't buy into that lie. He still wants you. He still wants to call you son or daughter. He still wants to put his best clothes on you, put a ring on your finger. He still wants to throw a massive party when you come back. Don't buy into the lie that he doesn't want you. It doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done. It doesn't matter how much of a prodigal you are or how much of an older brother you are. He still wants you. And the reason I know that's true, the reason I can stand here and say without a doubt, I can guarantee that that is true, is because of the cross. Man, if he didn't want you back, why would Jesus ever go to the cross? Why would he die? Why would he suffer? Why would he be humiliated in such an awful way like crucifixion if you were too far gone? If you were too much of a prodigal, if you were too much of an older brother, why would he ever care? Why would he go to the cross if he didn't want you back? Know this, God matches reckless living with reckless grace. Doesn't matter how reckless you've been, his grace for you is even more reckless. God's grace for you is prodigal. And you got to know that about him. You got to know that about God, or you'll start to try to please a God that doesn't exist on the moral side, or you'll try to reject another God that doesn't exist because you think he's rejecting you. But God is not about moral conformity. He's not keeping a naughty and nice list like Santa. He's not saying, well, he really screwed that up today. I better mark that down. Or, oh, she did a really great deed today. I better mark it. No, he's not doing that. He's not tallying up your rights and wrongs and then waiting to see what comes out on top. He's also not into self-discovery either. He's not saying, hey, just do whatever you want. It's cool. Because it all leads back to me anyway. He's not saying that. If you think that God is all about moral conformity, or on the other end of the spectrum, if you think he's saying, hey, take whatever path you want because there are no consequences, then you're thinking about and worshiping a God that doesn't exist. The God of the Bible, we got to know who he is, and he's represented by the Father in this story. We've got to know who he really is, or how are we going to be able to follow him? I want to know who God really is. I want to know what he's really like. I want to know who I'm saying that I'm following. Because only then can you experience the joy that you get from a relationship with him, and then you can really understand his grace, his love. Then you can really understand the truth. But you got to know who he really is. So how do we do that? Well, first step, you got to accept his acceptance. Whether that's the plead or that's the embrace. Like maybe right now you're about ready to take off. That you're gonna head down this road because you think this road, whatever it is, you think this road is where true happiness is gonna come from. Hey, that I'm gonna find self-fulfillment and self-discovery if I go down this road. But listen to his plea as he's pleading with you to stay right here. He's pleading with you out of love for you and out of wisdom because he sees where that road leads. And he doesn't want what's on that for you because he has something better. Listen to that plea, stay with him. And if you're hurting, if you think my life is too screwed up, if I'm too far gone, man, then just turn around and accept the embrace. Whatever road that is that you're walking down right now, stop. Just turn around and come back. That road that you're on, I don't know what it is, but whatever road that it is that's leading away from the Father, I promise you this, all that it does is leads to eating with pigs. And it leads to slavery in some form or another. It leads to pain, it leads to loss, no matter how great and how much of a promise is on there. Ultimately, it leads to death and destruction. So whatever road you're on, just stop, turn around. The embrace is right there and just accept it. That's for all of us. Prodigals ain't older brothers. And if you know Jesus, then what we get to do, not have to do, what we get to do, this is a privilege. We get to act like the Father to other people. That's what we get to do. We get to act like the Father to other people. If you used to be a prodigal, then you're going to know how to seek after prodigals. If you used to be an older brother, then you're going to know how to seek after older brothers. We get to do that. We get to act like the Father. We get to seek and suffer so that more people join the party. Because that's what this should be. It's a party. And this right here is just a glimpse because the party on the other side of eternity, when Jesus comes back, it's going to be a whole lot better than this. So we want to seek and suffer. We'll suffer. We'll be humiliated. That's okay if that means more people get to join the party. That's the mission of every single individual that follows Jesus. That's the mission of our church, is that we will seek and suffer so that prodigals and older brothers get to meet the true Father and join the party. And we'll hit on more of that next week. Let me pray. Father, honestly, I'm kind of nervous trying to describe you because I can't do it justice. You're such a great Father that loves and has compassion and forgiveness, but yet you are still a God of not only grace but truth. The grace is what we get to come back to, and the truth is what we get to stand on. I pray right now that we would experience that as a church, that no matter where someone is today on the spectrum, whether they're so far into the prodigal camp or they're so far into the older brother camp, that we would come back to you and see who you are as the real Father. God, make this place be a place where people would get to experience your presence, that whatever that embrace and kiss looks like that comes from you, I pray right now that people get to experience that not only today, but every single day that they walk in here. Let us be overwhelmed and driven by the same compassion that you were, and that as a church we would seek out people and that we would suffer for people so that the party here cannot be contained. God, anything that I said that was mine, strike it. Anything that is from you, impress it on everyone's hearts and minds today. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.